I Promised the World, Split Chain, 4 Years Strong, and The Devil Wears Prada. Big show in Atlanta at the Masquerade the other day. And I'm here to talk about it. Initially, the concert wasn't even something I was planning on going to, but I had one of my friends just kind of nudge me into going. And I said, sure, screw it. Why not? I'm glad I made that decision because it was a super enjoyable experience. I always love going to the Masquerade. It's awesome. This was at Heaven, which is their biggest venue of the 4 that they have in that little area. And it's always such a great time. So I'm going to talk about the show, how it was, a little review, and then we're going to get out of here. Of the lineup, personally, I had never seen any of these bands live before in any capacity. And as you can tell, I've got on the 4 Years Strong shirt, which we'll get to them. But initially, the first band starting off the show was I Promised the World, a band that I actually just posted a video on the channel, checking out their latest EP from January of this year, self-titled, and it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. They're one of those bands bringing back the revival core sound, almost emo, screamo, early 2000s metalcore, post-hardcore, kind of an amalgamation of all of those styles, and they do it really well. And I enjoyed their record, and live, I think their songs translated really well. Now, I will be putting up footage of the concert, except for this one, because my dumbass forgot to record. So there you have it. I'm used to going to these shows and not recording and putting them on YouTube, but we have learned our lesson for the future. But yeah, these guys were great. You could tell, God, they look like they're in high school. I don't know how old these guys are, but compared to me, they're young whippersnappers. But man, they put on a good show. They're really energetic, and the singer specifically, I think his name's Caleb. He has a lot of stage presence, you could tell. Very kind of brooding, but moves around, and appreciated, the way that he kind of conducted himself. And the rest of the band was keeping up with him as well, or doing what they could. Sound-wise, I would say they were a little more on the raw side, which plays into their style that they're going for on the record, at least from what I could tell. But live, it really translated well. And the clean vocals were a little down in the mix, from what I could tell, but overall, great sound. And the Masquerade, specifically Heaven, I feel like is known to have, at least in my experience, a heavier, boomy bass tone if you don't get it right. And for the most part, all of these bands during this show really did that very well, and I Promised the World was no exception. They were very well in tune with that, and yeah, they're just good live, good performances. And I kind of mentioned it in the video that I did for them before, but I just can see them doing big things. They really have a grasp on what they're trying to convey with the songs, and there's a lot of creative moments as well in their songs. I mentioned it. I think Proud, which they played live in the show, was amazing. What a great song, and just the way that kind of goes in and out between softer moments, heavier moments. They just know how to play with that in a great way, and it translated live well. So it's a good opening start to the show. Played about 7 or 8 songs, and then we get into another band where I actually had not prepped for them before the show and hadn't heard any of their material, and that was Split Chain, who... These guys were very interesting and a very different sound, at least from what I could tell for the rest of the show. They kind of had their own standalone appeal. Very much gave me a nu metal vibe, almost like a late 90s, early 2000s, kind of like post-grunge type sound that they were going for. Actually reminded me a little of Mood Ring in a lot of ways, maybe some Deftones in there as well. But the show itself was great. They did a great job. The singer himself was really able to kind of capture a lot of energy and get people moving in the audience, which I love. Always love to see that. And everybody else kind of followed suit. The guitarists and the bassists were doing some moves on the side, which was great. Get everybody involved. A lot of crowd surfing for this one, specifically as they were asking for it. And actually, throughout the show, crowd surfing was pretty intense, which is another item we'll talk about later. Crazy. Personally, their newest song, actually they played from the set list, I believe it's called Sylvia. that was, I think, their best song for me that translated live very well. It had kind of a different sound than their other material that they played. And it wasn't necessarily my favorite set overall, but again, I think they did well with the sound. The energy was up, and that was commendable. And overall, I think it was a solid show from these guys. Now, I did purchase the shirt. And the reason for that was because I thought 4 Years Strong was easily the best band of the night. They did such a great job in putting on a show. Funnily enough, these guys have been around for a while. I hadn't heard, at least from what I could recall, a single song by them. And that was kind of a shame for me because their set kicked so much ass. You could tell these guys are veterans. They've been around a while. Their sound was the best of the night from a quality perspective in the venue. Really professionally done. The way that they handled themselves upstage, they were moving and grooving. And it was just super enjoyable, man. I really was. They had a lot of heavy breakdowns, which I didn't expect. I checked out their song Whiplash before this, which kind of surprised me in a lot of ways, but very impressive. And their older material that they played live too had more of that old school pop punk feel, which I freaking love that style. So played into my hands. It was very nostalgic, and they did a great job. And then on to the headliner, The Devil Wears Prada. They have had a very interesting arc as a band, and actually hadn't heard really much of their new material, provided maybe a single here or there. And I also had never really gotten into their old stuff. But it was an interesting mix of the set list, I will say. But the crowd was great. Everybody seemed to love it. Speaking of the crowd surfing that we did, actually one of the buddy that I was there with decided kind of out of the blue to crowd surf, proceeded to lose his phone in the crowd. So if any of you have ever experienced anything like that, let me know in the comments. But yeah, that was a interesting thing to deal with at the end of the show, but we did find it, thank God. But yeah, these guys, they knew what they were doing up there for sure, you could tell. For me, I think the standout was Mike on vocals. I mean, the guy was a ball of energy. He knew how to do what he's been doing it for a long time, 20 years basically at this point. And he just knew what to do. His voice too is so unique. And I think that's the thing I've noticed about a lot of Prada records is, at least the stuff that I've heard, is his unique style and his energy. And it comes through live in such a great way. There were even moments during the show where he would go towards the back of the stage and just turn away from the crowd, I guess, which was very interesting. It's just weird stuff. He also grabbed a guitar at a few points, which was awesome. I was like, this guy rips, man. But overall, they started off with their newer stuff off of their Flowers album. And I think for the most part, that specific material provided for, except for maybe a couple songs, When You're Gone, All Out, a couple of those I like, but the ones they played live, I don't think it hit me as much, but I'm a big fan of their Color Decay album, and they played some of the heaters off of that album, which absolutely rocked live. They also had kind of an awesome moment leading into the song Ritual, where they had a little drum solo and keyboard action. Was very cool, kind of just to build the vibe and build the tone, kind of as like an interlude almost. Love a good live drum solo. As a drummer myself, I mean, let him shine. Come on. But they ended their regular set with Sacrifice, which is one of my favorites by them, and then came out for the encore and immediately went into Play the Old Shit, which I thought was just super funny and kind of ironic in a way. At that point in the show, they played that, followed by Assistant to the Regional Manager and Hey John as well. And those songs absolutely slap live. You could tell the difference between their older material and their newer stuff because they put it on display right there for everybody. And I think a lot could be said about that. Maybe on a separate video or a separate topic, but for the show's perspective, I just did really dig that aspect of it. I love that they did go back and forth, and their old stuff hits so hard. The songwriting is so good, and live it just translated really well. And the crowd too, they loved it. They loved all of it. Specifically Played the Old Shit, ironically enough. But yeah, Prada put on a great show. They were really well polished as well live. There was maybe, I think, one small area towards the end of the set. I think they were playing Des Moines where the mic kind of had some issues on Jeremy's end, but overall, good solid show. My only regret is that I didn't get any footage of I Promised the World, but still glad I got to see him live. So it was an enjoyable experience. Love going to concerts, and I plan to do more and then do more videos like this following them. And if you want to see that, consider subscribing to the channel. Leave a like if you enjoyed. And I will see you in the next one. Adios.